It seems that, for the moment at least, the community has prevailed. In the Dungeons & Dragons community, the last few weeks have been marred by controversy, silence, broken promises, questionable legal maneuvers, boycotts, copyright infringement attempts, mass cancellations, lies, deception, pandering, exploitation, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Unless you've been living under a rock since the new year began, you've undoubtedly heard about the controversy surrounding Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons, and the OGL. If by some feat this is the first that you're hearing about it, go check out some of my other or any of the other plethora of amazing creators who have helped shed light on this issue at length. I'll leave some links in the pinned comment below. However, yesterday it seems as though we may have turned a page in this ongoing saga. Last week, Wizards released a statement which amounted to nothing but PR at the time. It was full of promises, good thoughts, and quite a bit of creative wording to distract from their incredible failures. But yesterday, while we didn't receive a revised version of the OGL, we were instead treated to what the path forward looks like in regard to the OGL and how we as a community might be able to help shape it. Now, for clarity, as of the time of writing, nothing has officially changed yet, and this path forward could be nothing more than PR as well, but I feel as though we are edging closer and closer to the point of no return, and that we, as a community, may have won this battle, but there is still a lot more work that needs to be done. And sure, yeah, the whole thing maybe reeks a lot of "we're just sorry that we got caught," and once they realized the impact that the alleged OGL draft was going to have on their bottom line, they decided to reverse course. But for sake of discussion, let's take things at face value and discuss this most recent statement. Firstly, it does actually contain an apology this time, which I will admit was a nice change of pace, considering that no communication from WotC so far on the matter has done so, and more importantly, it actually appears to have come from a real human, Kyle Brink, rather than just the faceless D&D Beyond account. Though he does double down on referring to the leak as a draft, he does at least acknowledge its failures and comments on how their silence only served to exacerbate an already terrible situation. I'd say we're off to a good start. What Kyle sets out as the path forward is to essentially treat the revised OGL like an unearthed arcana. We will receive the draft by January 20th, 2023 at the latest, at which point we will also be provided with a link to a survey where we can comment on or provide feedback on the draft. The survey will remain open for at least 2 weeks, and the community will be given advance notice prior to its closing in order to help ensure that everyone can submit their feedback. He also seems to suggest that even once the revised OGL is prepared, that it will not be rushed through like the alleged draft was going to be, but instead that they will be giving creators ample time to prepare. The statement closes out by providing a list of things which he commits to not being changed or impacted in any capacity by the updated OGL. It should be noted that he indicates that there can be more things that are not changed, but we can expect the following to not be impacted at all by the revised OGL. Video content like this channel, commentators, streamers, live plays, etc. are covered by the Wizards fan content policy and thus will not be affected. No change to the OGL will affect anyone's ability to sell minis, novels, apparel, dice, and other items related to their own creations, characters, or worlds. Non-published works such as paid DM work, any content published to virtual tabletops, and the VTT providers can continue to use OGL content. Anything published to the DM's Guild, any OGL 1.0a content, there will also be no royalties for anything, and there will be no more license back requirement for your own content. In the interest of fairness, like I mentioned, I want to take everything that Kyle has presented in this statement at face value, but I do want to discuss a few of the things that he brought up. Firstly, I think the Unearthed Arcana style approach to updating the OGL is a huge step in the right direction. While we obviously do not know how much of our feedback they will take into account, or if it is simply lip service to the community, but if they do follow through on this, it is a great call. Anyone who's been involved in change management at a large company knows the pains of getting everyone on board with something that is likely to be an unpopular move, but getting the buy-in from your peers is one way to dramatically soften the blow. If we feel involved and like they're actually taking our feedback and insights, and feel like the changes are our ideas, it goes a long way to brokering good faith with the community, something that is in extremely short supply right now. Next, I want to discuss some of the things that he assures us will not be changing with the updated OGL. But before that, I want to touch on some very specific wording. He writes, any changes to the OGL will have no impact on at least these creative efforts. And then he proceeds to list them off. The wording though of no impact is very specific and I have to assume deliberate. No impact implies that there will be no direct or indirect effects to any of the listed items. This is significant, as it was something that was heavily suspected after last week's statement that used intentionally vague and ambiguous wording, seemingly in an effort to allow them some wiggle room to have many indirect impacts on some of these aspects. One of the most discussed was the assertion that they won't have any rights to use your work without your express permission, but in that signing the new OGL, you are giving that express permission, so it rendered the whole thing kind of useless. I wanted to touch on this because it means something. Words matter, and if they're trying to dig themselves out of a hole, very clear and specific wording like we see here is really the only way forward. Now, while I won't discuss all of the points that he lists in the statement, there are a few big ones that I feel are worth talking about, primarily what is happening with OGL 1.0a content. He very explicitly states nothing will impact any content you have published under the OGL 1.0a. That will always be licensed under the OGL 1.0a. This suggests that not only would you not need to convert over to the new version of the OGL, but that even if you update that original work, that will not somehow automatically void your rights under the OGL 1.0a. This is, again, very specific wording, and I have to hope that they truly mean what they say. This was one of the most contentious aspects of the leaked version, and it really is nice to see some commitment to maintaining the old version. There will be no royalties or financial reporting requirements. This brings a huge sigh of relief. Something I discussed in a previous video on the topic is how the royalties and reporting measures presented would act as a massive disincentive to anyone who wanted to create content for Dungeons & Dragons in the future, regardless of whether or not they were actually even making any money. The incredibly onerous task of detailing specific SRD content in their works, then reporting every sale and update to Wizards even if you aren't earning a dime, was just ludicrous. And while that $750,000 figure sounded like it was set pretty high, the reality is that it really wasn't, especially when you factor in the plethora of costs which go into creating large-scale works such as the Dungeon Dudes Dungeons of Drakenheim project. Lastly, the reinforcement that the creator will continue their own work with no license back requirements. This is a truly big win for the community if it holds true. The language present in the leaked document essentially provided Wizards of the Coast with the opportunity to own, publish, and distribute your own work and potentially profit off of it. While they stated that it was strictly there to prevent someone else from suing them if Wizards happened to release future content resembling the work of an individual, the way it was worded was far too punishing to the creator. Everything that Kyle presents in this statement, if it holds true, is truly a great thing for the community and represents a huge win for us. Make no mistake, this would not have happened without the pushback and backlash and mass cancellations of D&D Beyond subscriptions. The community banded together to make something really good happen, and we did it because we love this game. As I stated a few times, I did my best to take the words presented at face value. This was an intentional choice, as there is a significant amount of negativity and vitriol flowing around the community right now, and to be clear, it isn't unwarranted. However, I feel like continuing that rhetoric isn't conducive to a productive discussion or a healthy mindset, something that I am sure many of you all have been struggling with over the last few weeks. I've been having issues getting to grips with how I wanted to approach this situation, and I've been waiting for something like this to help me make my decision. I knew that I wanted to continue to play D&D, but it was looking really hard to do that in good conscience when it was so clear how Hasbro sees us. And it might sound silly, but I've spent countless hours over the last nearly 2 years slowly but steadily growing this channel and audience here on YouTube centered around this game that we are all so passionate about, and it was making me genuinely sad to think that I might have to give it up or shift gears into topics that I might not be as interested in. I want to remain hopeful but cautiously optimistic for the future of Dungeons & Dragons and the OGL. Because at the end of the day, the reason that any of this happened is because we all care about this game and the community that it has established for us. I will say though that this has got me looking into other tabletop RPGs. I am particularly interested in the Talisman Adventures RPG, which is based on one of my favorite board games of all time. Maybe I'll make some videos about that too. Who knows? I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Please don't stop making your voices heard, and take care.